questions about some graphs. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about the lowest possible degree. I'm just going to sketch like a graph and then we're just going to talk about it to show you how to do this. Because I don't know the best, put a little arrow here and maybe use a pen that works. So I'm just going to sketch like, no X, Y axis, nothing. Just pretend that that was a graph that we had. Okay, now, can anybody just, that little sketch I just made, can you tell from what we did on Friday, is that going to be even or odd, or do you know? Even or odd, what do you think, for the degree? Oh, I'm throwing things. Caleb, what do you think? Odd, why? Exactly. Okay, automatically, if you're looking at a graph, you can tell me if it's even or odd just by the opposite directions. If both ends go the same direction, you know it's got to be even. Does anybody know if the leading coefficient would be positive or negative, just looking at the graph from the end behavior? So like the end behavior here goes down at the beginning and up at the end. Remember if that's positive or negative. Okay, if you don't, this is positive, and here's how you can tell. Whatever is going on to the far right for any of these graphs will tell you whether it's positive or negative. If it's going up to the far right, then it's positive. That's even or odd. If it's going down, like this example here, this is going down to the far right, then it's going to have a negative leading coefficient. So this is positive and odd. Okay, now how do I determine the lowest possible degree? I'm just going to grab a little marker here. So this is, if you guys remember, we did like increasing and decreasing intervals when we were looking at the quadratics a little bit ago. Obviously there's more here, but like I'm just going to draw on this graph I made up a little bit here. So I'm increasing, I'm just going to go from left to right, and then I'm decreasing. And then I kind of turn here and I'm increasing, and then I'm decreasing, and then I am increasing. Okay, I'm just coloring it maybe a little bit so you guys can see. So it's the number of different intervals of increasing or decreasing. So it's literally just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the lowest possible degree. It could be higher than that, but that is the lowest possible degree. So this would have x to the 5th as the highest power at least. So it's just the number of intervals increasing and decreasing. So it's just like when I just literally trace the graph and count how many times I'm going different directions. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. So we're going to have you guys look at a couple graphs here. So it says determine the lowest possible degree. Let me just ask you real quick though. Is this one odd or even? Odd, because we got opposite direction. All right. Is it positive or negative? Positive. If it goes up on the far right, it's automatically positive. Okay, now, lowest possible degree. All I'm going to do, and you don't have to color these, I'm just going to color them so you can see. So here I'm increasing. Then I get to the top of this, I turn, and then I'm decreasing, and then I am increasing. So in terms of the lowest possible degree, we're going like up, down, up. So it's 1, 2, 3. So the lowest possible degree here would be third or 3. You could just write a 3 if you want to. All right. What about, do you think this last one here in this example, is this even or odd? Even. If the ends of the graph both go down or both go up, it has to be even. Now, in terms of positive or negative, just look on the far right. If it's going down, it's going to be negative. If it's going up on the far right, it's going to be positive. So this is even, negative, the end behavior down, down. All right, so here I'm increasing. And then I am decreasing, and then I'm actually bouncing here, increasing though for a little bit, and then decreasing. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Lowest possible degree there would be a 4th, so x to the 4th. Is anybody having a question about how to determine that? Okay, now, just going to kind of do this and also have you guys basically write an equation. But not, we're going to write it in factored form, so you don't have to multiply it out. But we're basically going to write a basic equation for the graph that you're seeing. Now, this is not specific because I don't have the y-axis labeled at all. We're not plugging in points or anything like that. We're just going to do some basic information about these graphs. So if I look at this graph, and maybe I'll just say, is this one odd or even? I know I don't ask that, but even. So I'm just going to add that to the top. This is even. Okay, now, is the leading coefficient here positive or negative? What is it doing to the far right? It's positive. If it's going up on the far right, it's going to be positive. Okay, now, what is the lowest possible degree? So if that helps you at all with what I was doing with the markers, or if you want to just, whatever, you can just kind of count with your fingers, but I'm decreasing these two intervals, and I am increasing these two. So what is my lowest possible degree for this polynomial? What do you think? 4. Okay. Can you guys then, we haven't done this at all, can you tell from the graph what the zeros are? Like, what am I asking you for if I'm asking you for the zeros with a given graph? Or what would you look for on the graph to answer that question? Exactly, where they intersect the x-axis. Okay, so what numbers would you write down for your zeros? Awesome. -4, right. -1, +3, +6. Okay, do I have a bounce on any of those? No, all of these all go right through the x-axis. You don't have anything bouncing off the x-axis. Okay, so to write the factored form, literally all I'm going to do, and again, this is just a general for this, it's not specific because I don't have any y values labeled or anything like that. So I could have like a number out in front of these, but we're not going to for our little example. I'm just going to ask you to write the linear factor that would go with the 0. So for example, if I have -4 is one of my zeros, the linear factor that would go with that would just be x plus 4. If it's negative for the 0, then the actual little factor is going to be positive. All right, so then for the -1, we'd have x plus 1. For the 3, if we got a positive 0, we're going to have x minus 3. And then the 6 will have x minus 6. And that's all you have to do. You don't have to multiply it out or anything like that. I'm just writing the factored form. If we did multiply that out, that would give us the standard form for a similar graph. Does anybody have a question? Okay. Let's look at this one right next to it. If you're, and I know I don't ask this, but would you tell me this is odd or even for the degree? What do you think? Has to be even because they both go the same direction. All right, is the leading coefficient going to be positive or negative? Got to be negative because you're going down to the far right. So the even goes with the lowest possible degree. So whatever it's going to be, it's got to be like 2, 4, 6, 8. If I get 5 for my degree, then I mess something up here. All right, so I'm just going to trace this like the other ones. So I would have a couple intervals where my graph has increasing, and I have a couple where I'm decreasing. So what's the lowest possible degree I could have here? 4. All right, now, here's our zeros. All you're looking for, where does it touch or cross the x-axis? So I got 3. Looks like -3, +1, and 5. Now, do I have a bounce on any of those? Yes, do you guys, okay, so at the 1, here, I'm just going to kind of highlight this right here. At the 1, I don't go through the x-axis. It like touches the x-axis and bounces back. So if you guys remember from Friday, that means that that bounce has an even multiplicity. All right, so in terms of when we're going to write this out, there's 2 things on this question that we're going to have to be mindful of. Do you guys remember how you told me this was negative? All right, and everybody's going to forget this, I know, but don't feel bad because I always do too. If it's negative, you just want to put like a little negative out in front of your factors. All right, that's what causes that to point down. Try not to forget it, but if you say that it's negative, make sure you start out your little factored form with just like a little -1. All right, now, Linear factor that goes with -3 would just be x plus 3. Linear factor that goes with 1 would be x minus 1. And linear factor that goes with 5 would be x minus 5. Now here's the deal. It bounces at the 1. So you can use any even number you want, but you have to put an even, I just usually use 2. Just put an even exponent on that 0 where you have the bounce. You could use a 4, you could use a 6, it's completely up to you. I usually just use a 2, but make sure it's an even exponent so that way you know that it bounces. Okay. All right, what do we think? I know I don't ask you this, but what do you think for this graph? Is it odd or even for the degree? This has to be odd. And that'll go with the lowest possible degree. So it's got to be like a 3, 5, 7, something like that. Is the leading coefficient here going to be positive or negative? Positive. It's going to go up at the right, so it has to be positive. Whatever it does to the far right of the graph, that'll tell you positive or negative. Now, your lowest possible degree here, again, you don't have to color on these, I'm just doing it here. So I'm increasing, then I am decreasing, and then I am increasing again. So I'm just going like 1, 2, 3 different intervals of increasing or decreasing. So the lowest degree here is going to be 3. Now my zeros, just grabbing where it touches or crosses the x-axis. What would you write down for your zeros for this graph? Thank you, thank you. -5, 0, and 2. Okay. The factored forms, the order we write these in totally doesn't matter, but how do I represent 0 in the little factor? With 0. Exactly. You're just going to have, so I was writing the other ones just kind of how I listed these. If you have 0 as an answer though, or 0 as a 0 or 0 as a root, just put a little x out in front. That'll cover that 0. Typically, if it doesn't have a set of parentheses, you just go ahead and put that out in front. So then I had the -5, so that would be x plus 5. So the -5, that would go with the linear factor there. And the 2 would just be x minus 2. So that would be the linear factor associated with that. This is not negative. I don't need a negative sign in front. There's no bounces, so I don't need to worry about any exponents or multiplicities here. And then I just have one more. Do you guys think this last one is even or odd for the degree? This has to be odd because they're going opposite directions. So my lowest possible degree here has to be like a 3, 5, 7, something like that. And this has got a ton of different intervals of increasing or decreasing. So I'm just going to trace all the decreasing real quick with my marker. And I'm going to go back and trace all the increasing. Oh, I forgot to ask you guys, is this positive or negative? It's got to be negative if it goes down at the right. Whatever it does at the right. If it's going down, it's negative. If it's going up, it's positive. What's the lowest possible degree for this one? What'd you get, Colton? 5. Perfect. All right, now, my zeros. So we're just, where does it touch or cross the x-axis? Those are the numbers you're going to tell me. So I got, what, -4, -1, and +4. Do I have any bounces here? At what number? The -1. Okay, bless you. You guys see that? Okay, so this bounces. Bless you. That does not go through the x-axis, so I have to have an even. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Fired. Okay, forgot one of them. 6. Just add that onto the end. My apologies. Yes, I totally didn't finish. So 6. Okay, no bounce at the 4, 6, or -4, but it does bounce. It doesn't go through the x-axis on the -1. It comes back the direction it came. Now, remember you guys told me this is negative. And I have people forget this all the time, but if it's negative, if you're going to write the factored form, just start out and put like a little -1 or just a little negative sign in front of your factors. That'll take care of this being negative. And then I'm just going to write my zeros. So I have -4, so that would be x plus 4 as a linear factor. -1 would be x plus 1. +4 would be x minus 4 as its linear factor. And 6 would be x minus 6. Now, if you have a bounce, which I do here, I have a bounce on the -1, you just have to go to that little set of parentheses and put an even exponent on it. Could be any number that's even, like 2, 4, 6, 8. I usually just use 2, but don't forget to go back and do that, otherwise the factored form would not be quite correct. Is anybody having a question?